Bouncing back from the pandemic, that's been a goal of the Oklahoma Department of Tourism and Recreation, and new numbers show the state is bouncing back and strong. So here with us today to break down some of those numbers and all the exciting things in our future is Executive Director Shelley Zumwalt. Shelley, welcome in.
Hey, thanks for having me. Exciting to be here.
Always good to see you. So let's talk about the state as a whole first. How has the state of Oklahoma really been attempting to bounce back from that pandemic dip in tourism?
Yeah, definitely. I think I have an interesting perspective after serving at OESC in the middle of the pandemic and then seeing the outcome of all the efforts that we made during that time to really be where we are today. And when we look at pre-pandemic numbers, we're one of the few states in the nation that have actually surpassed that direct visitor spending number from 2019. And we have a record breaking $10.1 billion in spending for 2021. And of course, I can't take credit for it. I just get to talk about it. I wasn't at the agency, but the important piece I think that holistically as a state, we can be really proud of, and maybe I played a small part in, is that really equates to almost 20 million visitors to the state and almost 100,000 jobs in our beautiful state.
Why do you think those numbers are gaining such traction here? What kind of draws does Oklahoma have? Why are people coming here in terms of tourism?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting perspective to have, really, because I think the things that people really valued pre-pandemic, and it may have been around huge cities with large populaces, and different things that maybe Oklahoma didn't think that necessarily we were leading the pack in. The pandemic changed everything. And I think people prize wide open spaces. I think they prize, friendly communities. I think that they prize the ability to really feel like they're out in nature and, seeing all the things that Oklahoma is really proud of, even if it's not about our state parks. It's about the uniqueness of, what's going on in Pawhuska with the Pioneer Woman. We just have a really unique set of attractions, but also, topography that we can share with the nation. And I think people are realizing that we're not just a flyover state, we're actually a destination. And that's really exciting.
I just want to get specific on OKC really quick here, briefly. We had numbers that $3.8 billion in economic tourism for OKC specifically in 2021. Do you know how those numbers compare to pre-pandemic, to 2019, things like that?
You know what? I don't off the top of my head, but I'm gonna make a guess because Oklahoma City is our largest city. That is a huge part of that 10.1 billion. And I can check with Mayor Holt just to double check, but I think I'm pretty confident in saying that we definitely surpassed a lot of what was going on there, and the momentum has been carried out throughout the state.
And do you think that there are things coming up in our future that will, help these numbers even more? Let's get specific here. What are some things that are coming up?
Yeah, I think the top line one that comes to mind is the Route 66 celebration. The centennial is in 2026, and Oklahoma is in a really unique position in that we have over 400 miles of Route 66, and our state that's comparatively doesn't have as many miles as other states that have less of Route 66. So we're right in the right place to be really taking advantage of that centennial. We've had people from all over the nation come and visit, and we actually just hit over 1 million visitors. We track that because we have a Route 66 passport that you can either get in your hand if that's what you'd like, or can get digitally, and you can get it stamped at every location along Route 66. And we've seen people from as far away as Poland and Japan really embracing this and getting excited to see Oklahoma specifically. And that just kind of gives, more credence to what I was saying earlier, that Oklahoma really is a unique place that people, we appreciate it here, but when people from outside of our state boundaries see what we have to offer, they're really enthusiastic and they keep coming back.
And so you've kind of answered my question with some of your answers, but really, what do you find is the biggest challenge in continuing to try and draw tourism here?
Yeah, you know what? I haven't been at the job long enough. I think that I'm super knowledgeable about what the continued challenges are. I think that, just making sure that we are prizing Oklahoma and our assets that we have. We have 11 different ecosystems here, and to really make sure that we are looking at it from fresh eyes. And I think that's the perspective I bring. There's going to be challenges. There's always challenges. We have over 30 state properties that we manage and over 700 employees. There's always going to be something that we can do better and that we can keep improving on. But that being said, I think as a whole, tourism in our state has really taken the opportunity that the pandemic presented and grown leaps and bounds since then.
And just last question here, and I'm not sure if we talked about this in the first question, but where does tourism rank in terms of the money making, capacity for the state of Oklahoma?
Yeah, great question. I'm super glad you asked that. We are actually the state's third largest industry. So when you think about that, the amount of money that we are bringing to, to support the state, it really is one of those industries that it's exciting to talk about, but it's also exciting to see flourish because it means we're doing the right things.
Okay, Shelley, I'm glad I asked that too. Okay, have a great day. Thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Okay, you too.